Welcome to REIunite. I'm Ryan Polakaitis, your host, and I'm here with a very special guest, Brian Meara. Brian Meara is a short sale specialist and also the founder of Investor Entourage. Today we're going to be talking about how to wholesale short sales. Thanks for being on the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
No problem. So before we dive right in, this is more of a high-level type of show that we'll go through. We're going to assume that most people know what short sales are, so we're not going to dive into the basics. Let's just jump right in. You and I actually both went into short sales around the same time. You were a little more versed in the area. I remember we talked, probably 6-7 years ago. And there was a lot of challenges at the time. I felt like I was always chasing basically the strategies. Okay, this works, and then by the time I'm implementing that, they're changing. And when I say they, it's the banks and FHA, et cetera, the regulations as far as hold periods and stuff like that. So why don't we talk a little bit about some of the current challenges of short sales back then and how they've changed over time?
Yeah, I'll give you. Yeah, actually, absolutely. Well, to go back to kind of exactly what you were saying, when I first got started in real estate, it was in 2007. So I got my license, and that's actually the year people think the bubble burst in 2008, 9. Well, in 2007 is when really short sales started popping up, and I'll never forget because I actually got an interoffice email at my Keller Williams, and it said, "Here's a free listing. It's a short sale. It's outside of Philadelphia. Who wants it?" And I didn't really think anything of it. I was a brand new agent, so I just kind of ignored it. But then it came through a second and third time, and I finally said, "Oh, well, I'll take it." I mean, I didn't have any listings anyway. I'm trying to get my business going, right? And so, looking back, I always tell people I probably should have thought there was a reason that 200 agents turned it down because no one wanted to do a short sale. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I was just so naive. I didn't know any better. So I did that short sale. We closed it after 9 months, by the way. It was in Manayunk. And that kind of started me as an agent doing short sales. And we did a ton of them for 2 years. In 2009, I actually decided to switch hats and become the investor while keeping my license active. But I started investing in short sales. And that's actually right around the time when people were still using a land trust. Remember that? The assignment of beneficial interest and all that? Well, it wasn't a few months into getting started or about to get started doing that, and all of a sudden that was,
Obsolete.
a bulletin came out. I'll never forget. It was actually called the death of the land trust. I was like, oh man, like here I am, just ready to get started. So anyway, then everybody was doing the A to B, B to C flips, right? Where you actually had to use hard money, the whole thing, or just do a simultaneous closing, which was allowable back then.
Correct.
Or a double close, I guess you would properly
Right. A to B, B to C closing.
Exactly. And everybody was doing that. And then really it was in 2010. We did really well doing that when you were still allowed to. And then in 2010, it was actually Countrywide, now known as Bank of America, that came out with their infamous bullet point number 10 on their approval letter, which said that you can buy the property at this discount, but you have to hold it for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
Very inception of hold periods. Because if you remember, prior to then, you could literally close it in this room, walk into the next room with the title company, and A to B, B to C. You bought it, you resold it, and made 50 grand in the middle.
Mm-hmm. I know some that would actually say, hey, B to C is going to take place first before we do A to B, even though there was some gray area but that's in theory is what they were doing.
Yeah, well, what they were doing, and it's funny you say that because that's actually one of the things that quite a few people, I don't think anybody went to jail, but it was frowned upon where they would do a dry closing. So the C buyer wires in their money into the escrow account of the title company, and so the actual B buyer buying it from the distressed seller was using their funds. Well, you're not allowed to do that.
Right.
They say legally each transaction has to stand on its own.
Correct.
So even if it meant borrowing transactional funding for 24 hours, the dough for a day, like everybody was doing at 2 points, that would make it a legal transaction. So I knew enough by working with the right attorneys to do it the right way. But you're right. So everybody was doing that.
You know what I think some were doing, and I guess what they were doing, they were waiting for the funds to come in. They weren't necessarily using those funds, and they were two separate transactions, two separate funds. But I think they were making sure that everything was package signed, delivered, sealed, delivered, et cetera, on the B to C, and then we
there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're right. It's funny because these are exactly anybody who was doing short sales back then encountered all these nightmares and all the situations. So it's funny you bring that up. But that was really, Bank of America started it. Countrywide, again, is what they were known as back then. But then every other bank got involved. We're going to, and then it was Aquin, and then it was GMAC, and then it was Citibank. And pretty much Bank of America started it, but then it rolled out to everybody where there was these hold periods. But the problem was we saw 30, 60, 90, 120. I've even seen 180 days on the hold period before you could resell it. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So back in 2000, what was it, 2012, I believe, the FHFA, which is the Federal Housing Finance Agency, decided to standardize this. Now, of course, they can only dictate what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac does because that's who they oversee. But that's 50, depending on who you talk to, 54, 57% of all mortgages out there. And today it's actually even higher. But the point is, they wanted to standardize the hold period. So they didn't like, well, this bank was 30 days and this one was 180. So they basically came up with a process. Now, of course, whatever Fannie and Freddie does, most all other banks and servicers follow right in step, right? So the standard and what still operates today is that if you buy a short sale, there is no transfer of title for 30 days. There's 30 days, you're owning that house, you can't sell it, it doesn't matter what you do to it, it's just not happening. As a matter of fact, they actually write it in as a deed restriction. So in the deed, so you can't be cute and take it to another title company because once they see in the deed, there's no transfer of title, no matter what. Now, you can sell it between day 31 and 90, but they cap your profit at 20%. So if you bought it for $100,000, you can only sell it for $120,000, and that's comparing line 101 to line 101 of the HUD. So it doesn't matter. You can say, well, I put in a whole new kitchen. I did, I'll get 2 appraisals. None of that matters. It doesn't matter what you did. It doesn't matter if you have 30 appraisals. You're not selling that for more than 20% of what you bought. So what that did right there is it took the lower end houses and threw them out the window. Because think about it, man. We were buying houses at 30 grand, putting some money into them, reselling them, making a nice profit. Well, if you buy a house at 30 grand and you're capped at 20%, you can't resell it for more than 36. $6,000.
No one's
going to spend more than that in closing costs. And you know what I'm saying? So it really, we determined for the most part that the price at which we should even entertain buying something is around the $200,000 and up range. In other words, considering that hold period. Because now at least you're working with $40,000. You see what I mean? So if it just needed a minor cosmetic enhancement where you can come in and put in new carpet, paint the walls, do things like that, you're in and out for maybe $5,000. There's still money to be made. And of course, the higher you go, the better it is. Now, by the way, getting back to that and the time period, so again, 0 to 30, there's no resale. 31 to 90 is 20% cap. Day 91 and on, you can sell for whatever you want. So really, it's a big mathematical equation. You got to look at your money source. Are you using your own funds? Are you taking out a loan? Are you getting hard money? What is the cost of the money? And then extrapolate that over the potential hold period. And everything plugs into a big mathematical equation, determining if it's worth actually buying that house or not. See, the problem is, Ryan, people will go into short sales and they think they have their exit strategy and they're 100% confident of what they're going to do. I'm going to buy this house. I'm going to do that. The reality is you don't know what you're going to do to the house, and even if you should even buy it until you get the approval letter. Because until you know two things, until you know what the bank will allow you to buy that house for and what if, potentially if any hold periods there are, you don't know the numbers. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't make that decision at the beginning. You can just calculate your best offer, negotiate it as best as you can, and then once all the data is at hand, make the decision on your proper exit strategy. Okay.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, Brian. That restriction as far as the profit margin is still in place today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yep. So, I mean, that definitely does have an effect on those lower-end homes.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, too. It's, again, everything has to be weighed carefully because if you're looking at a $30,000 house or a $50,000 house and you're paying a certain percentage rate in points, let's say, to a hard or private lender, well, obviously the cost isn't going to be that much. You're not borrowing money on a $250,000 house, right? So you very well may be more inclined to actually use hard money and ride out any potential hold periods, even 90 days. But again, you have to plug it into your deal analyzer or software or whatever you use to determine that. Once you know all the numbers.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like that 20% now, I mean, that may be an opportunity for, let's say, landlords who don't have any intentions of selling it, within the time period. So obviously things have changed a lot since, you and I first got into the business. I mean, the 30 days was something that was like a big shock to everybody. And now we have these other regulations in store which really limit the profit that we can make. That's one of the things. Anything else that has changed significantly since 2009 era?
Well, yes, in the National Standard Short Sale Policy, which is what the term of this law was that came out, and I think I'm trying to remember, I believe it actually went into effect in November of 2011, if I remember. But anyway, it's obviously still in effect today because nothing came out to supersede that. But there's two other things, actually. One of the things, if you remember back in the day, is that you had to be behind on payments in order to qualify for a short sale.
Correct.
As a matter of fact, the servicers, the banks back then,
Would even tell you.
they would tell you, well, miss a payment and then call us back.
Exactly.
Well, it didn't take too long for some attorneys to catch wind of that and form some class action lawsuits. The bank told me to stop paying, so obviously they don't say that anymore.
Right.
But what they did do, part of this policy, is they said, look, if you have a legitimate hardship that is permanent in nature, you don't have to be behind anymore to qualify. Now, what does that mean? Well, technically nobody knows because they didn't define it. But generally, it's something that's not going to change. Someone got cancer, unfortunately, and they're extremely ill. Okay, they can't work anymore. There's a divorce going on. In other words, it's not just that you want to relocate for a bigger house. You want to downsize. You want to change neighborhoods. Possible job relocation. Now, while I say this, I've still to this day never actually worked on a deal in over the almost 700 that we've done over the years where someone was not behind on payments. Because I personally, as a company, we don't work with someone unless they're behind. Mm-hmm. Because even though the banks are saying that they'll work with you, they always find some reason, because we have tried it quite a few times, where they don't think it's a proper hardship.
Correct.
So again, were they just appeasing the public and Congress trying to say, well, we're trying to help the homeowners, maybe because of all the bailout money they took? Possibly. But in the real world, unless you're behind, they really, and if you think about it, Ryan, they really don't have an incentive to discount anything when you're currently paying them.
Exactly.
Why would they?
Right, and it's funny you say that because I've experienced the same. I mean, I've had, I've worked with agents who say, hey, we can go ahead and put this through just as long as we show the proper hardship. That's what the bank tells us. But I don't think we've had a successful short sale to date unless they were behind.
I know a lot of people that, there's not that many people still really doing a lot of short sales in the country today. There's a lot of pockets, as you know, in North Jersey. We're doing very well. We're just opening up somewhat of a satellite office in Houston because there's a lot of short sales actually coming back right now as we speak down there because of what's going on with the oil industry and a lot of people losing their jobs, et cetera. But there's only certain pockets where there's a lot of heavy activity. And the reason I say that is because I'm still talking and in touch with most people who are still heavily doing them. Also in Florida, by the way, certain parts of Florida. But you're right. I don't know anybody who's actually ever closed a deal when they weren't behind.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but it's definitely not as common.
They say it is, but...
So, okay, we have those list of challenges. And
there's one other thing. This is a major change in that, dealing with a second lien, a second mortgage, a HELOC, whatever it was on the property, was generally a very big problem. They took out $100,000 and they wanted all 100, or they wanted 50,000 of it, and there just wasn't enough money. How much did the first offer? Well, generally $1,000 to $3,000 was the range that 99% of them would offer. Well, it's take that or nothing, right? It would hold up the deal, sometimes kill some deals. Well, now the second lien holders are capped at $6,000 on Fannie Freddie loans. They're capped. Now, that's also, by the way, to insert something here, a good idea when you're starting a short sale or entertaining doing a short sale, you want to find out if it's a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac deal. And there's lookup tools where you can actually go online and see if it's owned by Fannie or Freddie, because you'll know that they have to adhere to that. So if you have a monstrous second and it's not a Fannie or Freddie loan, there's a good chance that could be a deal killer. Just kind of little things to look out for. You know what I mean?
Excellent. That's a great tip.
Okay. It doesn't matter if they wrote $600,000. They're getting $6,000, they have to take it, and that's it. So it kind of makes things a little easier.
Do you find out that in those situations that they'll still say, sorry, we're not interested, or do you find that most of them are accepting them?
All the time they fight it. They fight it, and they play stupid. They what do you mean I have to the servicers are playing games. You understand? They're compensated for how much they recover for the actual note holder, for the person who owns the loan. They're getting paid the 3% servicing override, and they're just, playing bill collector.
Right.
And the fact that they're compensated on the more money they get, is a whole other discussion. But the point being, they're not going to obviously offer this information to you. You have to come to them with the knowledge and letting them know that, hey, the law states that this is a Freddie Mac loan and that you will take $6,000. I don't care that you're owed $74,300. You're going to take $6,000.
Right.
Well, we're not going to take that. Well, then I want to speak to your supervisor. And you escalate it to the point where someone with a little bit of knowledge will agree with you, and then it'll get done.
Okay.
I've never had one not get done when you push it up the chain far enough. They can't fight law. I mean, it's the law of the land. You know what I mean?
Right. So that highly increases your success rate on these short sales with those types of loans.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So we have obviously the list of challenges that have changed and modified over time. I know some of the previous methods to get around the hold periods where, as you mentioned, either a land trust, some of the other methods were to buy the property in a brand new LLC, then sell the LLC.
By the way, you can still legally do. They've never clamped down on that. They've never said, I mean, you would think, obviously they know it goes on, but they apparently don't have a problem with it. And I think, Ryan, I think the reason, after thinking about this for many years, you know, they do their valuation. They send out a BPO agent. They actually pay for an appraisal. Rarely. They're cheap, right? But when they actually go out and get their valuation, remember, they're just order takers. You know, they're just collecting data for the investor, for the person who owns the loan, right? Whether it's Fannie, Freddie, or you and me holding some paper. The point being, they're giving directives and they're giving certain minimums. Their job is just to go out and get it done. So if they get the number, they get a valuation, they're getting a certain percentage of that based upon what the investor told them they need, they really don't care what you do with it after that, because job done. They recovered the loss. They mitigated the loss, you know, loss mitigation to the best of their ability or to the satisfaction of the actual note holder, to the point where if you bought it in an LLC and the same day or the next day you sell the LLC, well, then I guess they really don't care, because it's never been a problem and because it's frankly 100% legal. And I'll tell you one other thing you can do. Once you actually own the property, a lot of people are just putting the tenant in there, so they'll lease it back to somebody. Not the original person who defaulted, because you still can't do that. But I'm saying the new person who's going to buy it. You could write up, let's say there was a 30-day hold period, but they wanted to get in there and start working on it. Well, you can actually do a 30-day lease for them with an option to buy at the end, where they can take possession, start working on it, don't have to wait the 30 days, and then they just execute on day 31.
Right.
So
you do that a lot in Jersey? I mean, Jersey to me is a very, you know, it's not too landlord friendly. I have some rentals and
not at all. And what is one of the things I wanted to talk about on today's call is a process that we perfected back in 2010. Created a course on it, as you know, and sold that nationwide. You know, thousands and thousands of people bought that. Which is wholesaling short sales, which is how to get paid to not do the deal. You know,
right? Which is the topic of discussion for today. So. You know, obviously our listeners are listening to all these restrictions and they're saying, wow, you know, sometimes wholesaling without a bank involved can be challenging. Now we have a bank involved, deed restrictions, etc. Let's just dive into overcoming these challenges and how you wholesale a short sale.
It's extremely simple. And if anybody knows anything about wholesaling, it's the exact same thing. The only difference is, just like if you were wholesaling a deal, you could assign your contract, you could assign it, right? Well, you can't assign a short sale approval letter for one reason. They're name specific. If Brian Meara or my company, Bormio Properties, has been given approval and they give me, an approval letter, well, it's going to say, like right here, it's going to say Bormio Properties. You see what I mean? I can't assign that to you because you can't close on it because you're not Bormio Properties or you're not Brian Meara. So how do you get around that? You don't get around it. What you have to do is do a swap. You have to give the bad news, good news phone call or message to the bank that the bad news is, I'm no longer buying this property. I've decided not to buy it, but we do have a backup buyer for you for the exact same amount. So the bad news is I'm not buying it. The good news is we have someone who will. You see what I mean? Now, in the name and in the light of full disclosure, you have to send in your release and termination of contract, which is a document, a legal document we've created, which is basically your wholesale assignment fee. So let me give you a real-world example. I have an approval letter to buy a house for $150,000, okay? The houses are selling for $180 in the neighborhood. We're going to look at $30,000, but then we started looking, this one has a restriction. Number one, we're capped at $30,000, and you're not going to make 30, 20% of 150 because of the holding costs, et cetera. It needs $7,000 worth of work. We determined in our analysis that after we got the approval, this one isn't worth buying, and it's not even worth holding. So what do? Well, we attract a new buyer. We send it out to our buyers list. We actually will put it back active on the MLS, legally allowed to do so because we were granted what's called an equitable interest in the property from the seller in distress, which means we have the legal right to market the property through an agent, by the way. Little side detour here. There's a lot of scrupulation going on. There's a lot of investigation by federal agencies into illegal wholesaling acts right now. They're going to be clamping down on that. You'll see some things probably hitting the news in the next 12 to 24 months where they're really going after people who are wholesaling, illegally. They're doing things that are, in their eyes, criminal, not only unethical, because they're acting as an agent without a license. Correct. They're marketing properties they don't own. Now, there is a legal way to do that and get around that, which is obviously not the purpose of today's call, namely just use an agent. You know what I'm saying? Don't act like an agent if you're not. Now, you and I are both agents, so we have a huge advantage over most wholesalers in that we can do things others can't. Now, when you're granted in a short sale, part of a short sale, one of the legal requirements is that it has to be listed with an agent. So it's listed anyway. So all you're doing is getting the right to review the offers with your equitable interest. You're not relisting it. You're not selling something you don't own. You're just entertaining the offers because you're the one with the legal right to sell it. Right. And the MLS and the state of New Jersey and any other state agency or federal agency cannot take away a right that was granted to you called an equitable interest by an owner of record for a property they still legally own.
Right. Now, let me just interject really quick because
but I just wanted to get on.
No, that's good. And I'm happy that we brought in the subject of MLS because this is a hot topic lately as far as some MLS systems are preventing people from listing properties that they don't own. They're just saying, hey, this is our regulations. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing ways to get around that? I've heard of, okay, if you have written consent from the homeowner, not just in the contract, but some MLS systems will do it. Some MLS systems will say, sorry, no contract purchasers. Are you seeing that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because, again, you know, we do deals nationwide. We still have JV partners and coaching students nationwide. And I'll tell you what, there's one thing that we've understood and learned is that you can't get around the MLS. The MLS, you know, you would think, what is the MLS? It's a privately held company. It's a for-profit corporation. It's a marketing tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a marketing tool. But they act as a governing body. They really have this power trip going on, and most people, you know, don't realize that, but they control it. There's no getting around it. If they're saying you cannot list it unless you're the owner of record, et cetera, well, then don't do it. See, that's never been a problem for us in the way we teach our system because we don't have to list the property. We don't want to list the property. We use a real listing agent, and the listing is with the owner of record. It's their listing. We're not ever listing the property. We're simply entertaining the offers as they come in because the homeowner gave us the right to. So we're never listing the property. We're never getting in trouble with an MLS, and we don't even have to deal with that. You know what I mean? That's our way around it.
Right.
How do you get around listing in the MLS when you're not the owner? It's simple. I don't list it. The homeowner lists it. I just look at the offers because they're coming to me.
Right. So that last part, I mean, that's key. Let's just say if you were approached and whatever it may be, okay, Brian, there's a listing here. You're not the owner. Why are we, putting the offers through you? I'm sure many agents are asking that question. Wait a minute. Who's this guy, Brian? Who's Borromeo Properties? Why do we have to tell him the offer? I want to tell the homeowner. I'm sure you get that all the time.
Well, not that much, because here's why. Because we don't go after existing listings. One thing I don't do is run a search on the MLS and look for short sales and then contact them, explain my process, and try and get them on board with what I do. We do reverse marketing. So what I do is I continually put the word out. We do weekly webinars, send out weekly newsletters. We have a nationwide scope of realtors that are in our network, and we continually let them know, here's how we work short sales. And if you get a short sale, if you're about to go on a short sale listing, if you have an existing listing without a buyer, here's how we can help you. So the deals come to us. We don't go for the deals, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
So they're approaching us knowing our system, knowing that, hey, listen, here's how we work, which, by the way, none of them fight it when they truly understand it. We're basically telling them we're going to do all the heavy lifting for them. We have an entire staff of negotiators and attorneys that will do all of the work with the banks, generally more than one, lien holders, etc. We're going to run title. We're going to do all the negotiating. We're going to achieve an approval letter. We're going to close on this, or we're going to sign our interest, and we're going to get you paid. So what do I have to do? Put the sign on the law and put it up in the MLS. That's it. Now, when the offers come in, we simply want to be copied on them. They're always going to the owner of record. There's just a little CC field so that I can discuss with the owner of record what I'm going to do with the offer and whether I'm going to actually buy it, explain to that new buyer that I'm going to buy it and we have to wait a certain period of time adhering to any rules of, resale, and then resell to them. Sometimes the buyer says, well, I don't want to wait 91 days or I don't want to wait 30 days. Fine. Well, then we have a solution to do that. We're going to get their approval letter rewritten in your name, but you are going to pay me a release and termination of contract fee. So in other words, I had the house locked up for $150. You were going to pay me $185 for this house because it's worth $200. Tell you what, why don't we do this? In order to get you this house quicker and faster, because none of us want to wait. I don't want to wait to get paid, and you don't want to wait 90 days to buy this, 91 days. You can step in my place. You can buy it for $165. I had it at $150, but I'm going to make $15,000 for me and my team. Now, if this house is worth $200,000, they're getting a $35,000 discount. Not to mention it's $15,000 or $20,000 less than what they've already agreed to pay based upon a contract that they put together. what are the chances they're going to go for that? Pretty darn good. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
They're not going to fight that because they're getting a hell of a deal and they're getting it faster. Now, what do we do there with the bank? Again, the bad news, good news phone call, and then we submit to them the new contract, the new HUD with our fee on there. You got to disclose it. We put that right on line 104, and they approve it about 99.9% of the times. Since we've been doing this, Ryan, since 2010, and with all the thousands of courses, over 3,000 people bought our course, and all the people, this that I'm aware of was denied one time. One time. Now I'm going to knock on some wood because my luck. The next one I put through will get denied. But no, in all seriousness, one time the bank said, "Thank you for this." They're actually cool about it. It was Wells Fargo. Go figure. They were like, "Listen, we appreciate you disclosing to us that you're going to make money, but this particular investor, it wasn't Fannie or Freddie, is not willing to allow a prior buyer to get what they term an assignment fee. They just don't want to pay it. Well, it's their prerogative." And they said, if you want to resubmit this buyer without your fee, we'll go ahead and let the deal go through. So what I did, I thought was the ethical thing to do, was I'm not going to hold up the deal and let the homeowner foreclose and not let this guy get his house. I didn't make any money on the deal. I willingly stepped aside and didn't get paid. First time since we've been doing this in 2010, this literally happened. I was in Italy, and I got the bad news in January, so last month. So literally this happened last month for the first time in almost 6 years.
And you've closed other deals since then, so that this is just like a one-off type scenario? Or do you feel this is a trend that's maybe starting?
No, it's not a trend.
Okay.
Small local investor from a small local bank, and this is, like I said, Wells Fargo had first position on this. Here's the other thing too. We just got 2 new approvals on deals after our fee was submitted on the HUD. No problem. We have a guy in North Jersey that has 74 in his pipeline right now. Works out at Kenworth, wherever that area is up there. You probably know that better than I do. And he's got a whole book of deals going on right now. He's getting 2-3 approvals a week. So no, I don't think it's a trend. I just think it was a one-off weird deal. You know what I mean?
Right. And I'm subscribed to your program, and it does work. I've used it. One thing that I could say is, we were talking about bringing the end buyer. I do a lot of wholesaling. 99.9% of actually probably about 100% of the end buyers in my scenario are cash buyers, and like 99% of the time or 95% of the time it's an investor, not your end user, regular home buyer, or somebody that does this on the side, so to speak. But with this system, typically you're bringing on the end buyer who I believe needs a mortgage, correct?
Depends at the price point. Generally, 100
okay.
and below, it's always cash, as you know, because there's still not many people really going to write paper under 100 grand. But anything from the 125 and up range, actually, let me take that back. 125 to around 500, there's almost a 90% chance, in my experience, they're going to get a mortgage.
Right.
You start getting up 450, 500 and up, you see a lot of cash once again. So it's funny, I see a lot of cash at the lower end and at the higher end. But in the middle, yes, there's a very high chance it's going to be someone needing a mortgage. The only time that this is not going to work as well, and I say as well because not that it's not going to work at all, is if it's an FHA buyer. Reason being is this. They're a very, very light buyer, right? FHA buyers only have 3.5% to put down.
Very little.
Very little reserves. Every penny's counted. They're very highly scrutinized. The way we close with FHA buyers is we still get the deals closed. We just make less money. Because in other words, even though they owe me $15,000, and even though they're getting a great deal, they just don't have it. So what we do, here's the thing: let's say they were willing to pay $185 for the house, and I got it at $150. You know damn well they don't have $35,000. So what we'll do in most times, in those cases, we average around $10,000 to $12,000 on FHA buyers, because that's all they can come up with. And you say, well, how can they even come up with $10,000 to $12,000? Well, listen, if you're saving them $20,000 to $25,000 to $30,000 on the house below fair market value, $40,000 below, they're going to go call mom. They're going to take it on a credit card. It really doesn't matter to me where they get the money, because you're giving them a deal of a lifetime. And I have a team and a staff of people to pay for the work that we did, which was to obtain, free and clear marketable title, which, by the way, without me having done, they wouldn't even be able to buy this house.
Correct.
So
you're basically, okay, so we can kind of backtrack slightly and then come back around. For our listeners, regular wholesaling, where you're not involving with short sales, typically no banks, free and clear houses, let's say you're contracting, and as a wholesaler, you're going to assign that contract to the end buyer. You collect your assignment fee. Short sales, we obviously do not have the ability to assign. So in essence, to keep it simple, you're getting paid to step out of the transaction. Someone is buying your position. Now, obviously, you have a slight challenge if these buyers do need a mortgage, because mortgage companies will not approve other fees, assignment fees, etc., even if the bank were to allow them. So that being said, with these end buyers, you're basically saying, okay, you're saving them so much money that they're going to find that money somewhere.
Yeah.
And just with the FHA buyers, there's just probably a lesser amount due to the amount of funds that they have at their disposal. But when you're giving them that much of a discount, you're saying that they're going to find that money, and I'm sure probably your staff can give them, kind of coach them along the way where they could pull this money from, I imagine.
And I mean, the one thing is with a cash buyer who doesn't have the money, we've even held back second mortgages and put a lien on the property and allowed them to make payments over time that were agreeable to them. You can't do that, especially with some mortgages conventionally you can. The mortgage company will have a problem with it, but you're not going to get that with an FHA buyer because you start piggybacking liens on top, they're going to now then all of a sudden their DTIs are out and they don't qualify anymore, right?
Right.
So that being said, it's normally you take what you can get. So we try to present to them such an incredible deal that it's only going to make sense for them to somehow come up with this money. Now, again, it has to be on the HUD, but it's being paid as a release and termination of contract, which is a legitimate buyer's side closing cost. You see what I mean? Now, here's the other thing. We can also get it paid outside of closing. It still has to go on the HUD because we have to disclose it, but it could be POC. Now, it depends on their lender and their comfort level and their underwriting guidelines, but that's generally not a problem. There's two other ways you can be compensated if it's not going to be paid in the form of a release, is that we're generally very good at getting the majority of closing costs taken care of by the bank. We negotiate very hard where they're going to pay transfer tax, they're going to pay this, they're going to pay that. They're going to basically pay for closing. Well, you're generally averaging, depending on the price range, around $2,500 to $4,000 in fees and closing costs that are the 100% legitimate obligation of the buyer to pay. Well, if I just saved you $4,000 that you were not paying, you would have had to bring that to the table anyway. So in other words, that now becomes a profit line for me. So because the bank's paying it and you were planning on bringing it anyway, it's not messing any of their ratios where they would have had to bring that cash anyway to closing. It's just labeled differently on the HUD and paid to my company. Likewise, if you partner with an attorney firm, you can have an attorney get paid a fee from the buyer for services rendered and have a legal arrangement with the attorney where you bill them for services rendered for your team doing the negotiating. So the attorney just wants $500 a deal to, represent this buyer, if you will, because that's who they'd have to represent if that's who's paying them. And then you charge a $2,500, $3,500, whatever the difference is in what the bank agreed to pay, so you can collect an attorney fee. Let me take that back. You as an attorney cannot collect an attorney fee. You can bill the attorney for services rendered, and that's the legal way to get around it and do it.
Right.
That plus recovering closing costs are two different ways. So let's say you pick up $2,500 here, $2,500 there, and they could only come up with $5,000 for your release. Well, there's $10,000. You see what I mean? So it does take a little bit of getting creative, but as long as you're doing everything, I tell people all the time, it sounds very complicated when it's really not when you break it down. I mean, I know the way I talk about it because we've done this so much and you have a thorough understanding of it. It seems very simple, but to some of your listeners, they may think, oh my God, holy shit, this is like, well, what is all this talk? It's not as bad as it seems, and once you understand the lingo and what we're doing, it's really not that big of a deal. You know what I mean?
It's just careful planning and just putting all the pieces in the puzzle together, which, actually leads to my next question. Now, you have the foundation, the process for most people seems pretty simple. The next step is really building your team. So how would you go about building your team for this? Obviously, you don't want to be doing the negotiating with the banks. You want to be partnering with agents so that they're your boots on the ground, bringing the deals. So, let's just say, okay, someone studies your course and they understand the process from A to Z. Next step is, okay, I got to build my army. I got to build my team.
Believe it or not, the only thing you need really to get started, you need one person, and then you only need a negotiator. We used to say back in the day that the average negotiator could handle 15 to 20 files, but that's when everything was manual. That's pre-Equator, and that's everything being done online with different systems. The average negotiator with good time management skills should be able to handle a good 40, 50 files. Now, most of your listeners aren't going to want to even build a pipeline that big of short sales at one time anyway, so one solid negotiator, you'll be good to go. And I found that the easiest way to find that person is just to run an ad on Craigslist. Run an ad on Craigslist. You're looking for someone who has prior short sale negotiating experience. Maybe they work for a title company. Maybe they worked for an attorney. Maybe they worked for a mortgage company. You understand? Maybe they're a realtor and they've done their own short sales and they want to do this on the side to earn some extra money.
Right.
Maybe they've never done negotiating of specifically short sales, but they have experience doing other types of negotiation or processing, prior title clerks, prior even executive assistants, people who are just very good and organized. Because look, as investors, and what we do and what we teach the other investors to do is how to properly analyze the deal in the beginning to come up with your pricing strategy to get the ball rolling. At the end of the deal, you want to come up with your exit strategy, once again, once all the figures are known. In the middle, you're just pushing paper. There's no real negotiating going on. They call it a negotiator. It's you submit, you do valuation, you come back with a counter, you come up as high as you want, which of course they're coming to you as the investor to see how high you want to go. And so they're really just, it's managing a process, and there's a lot of paperwork going back and forth. There's document requests, they want updated pay stubs every 2 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. And so someone who's just highly organized would be a perfect candidate for that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I recall posting on Craigslist for stay-home moms, and anyone who had the authorization to release was able to negotiate. I mean, literally anyone could do it. But since then, I believe things have changed, right? It would either have to be a licensed agent, or I think someone affiliated with a law firm. Is that correct? Has that changed? Is it?
The state of New Jersey has a law that in order to operate to negotiate a debt for somebody, you legally need to be a licensed mortgage broker, you need to be a licensed realtor, or you need to be an attorney. Okay? There's a key though, and there's a hook. Only if you're charging money. If you're not charging money, that doesn't apply to you. There's a loophole. The loophole is, and nobody knows this, and I could send you this. I think it would be something good for you to have in reference. If you read the law, as long as you're not charging money, if you're not taking consideration for your services, that doesn't apply to you. Well, we never charged a homeowner a dime. You have to understand why they put this law in place, because there was a lot of companies, specifically loan mod companies, popping up 2008, 9, 10, 11, which were charging exorbitant upfront fees to people who were in a horrible situation, preying on the weak, whatever you want to call it, taking advantage of people. So they said, look, man, you can't just, call yourself a loan mod company. Go around to people who are losing their house and say, give me $2,500 and I'll save your house.
I've seen plenty of those. I've had homeowners contacting me saying this attorney or this negotiating company took $2,500, sometimes even more, and sat on the file and never heard from them again. And that was countless times. And that's obviously why we have the laws in place that we do.
I agree with these laws 100%, but I hesitate to even call it a loophole, because again, if you understand the intent of the law and why it was passed, it was to prevent dirtbags like that from preying on people. But when we're coming in and we're saying, look, we take the risk as investors. We're coming in with an offer to put on this property to buy it. We're going out and securing our funds to buy it. We're going to do all the heavy lifting and all the negotiating in between. And then we're going to actually, take this house. The homeowner's never being charged a dime. We're never charging the realtor. If we don't make money on this deal, either by buying it, reselling it, buying it, putting a tenant in there, or releasing our interest, we lost. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we're taking all the risk. So I have no problem, doing it that way, because that's just our business model. But again, you don't have to worry about that as long as you never charge the homeowner. Now, I can say one other thing on that. I know quite a few attorney firms, and they're legally allowed to do so, who will still charge sellers in distress for their services to represent them. And that's just up to the homeowner. That's one funny thing, Ryan. People say all the time, well, I'm going through a short sale, I'm getting all these letters from the bank, and I got a notice of default filed. I guess I need an attorney. I don't see why. I mean, I'm not anti-attorney. My partner in my course is an attorney, but I don't see any reason for an attorney. What's an attorney going to do? They're going to negotiate my short sale. Well, so will I. Free. You know what I mean? What do you mean? And I'm also the buyer.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Let me ask you this. I mean, I personally have not seen the advantage, but some homeowners may feel, and there may be some banks that it may have a benefit. Do you feel, or have you seen a benefit in an attorney negotiating a short sale versus the homeowner themselves in some situations, somebody else?
Never.
Right. I haven't either.
Advantage. I mean, because you have the ESQ after your name, well, what the hell does that do?
Right.
Congratulations, buddy. You passed the bar. You know what I mean? No, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't give you any indication of their ability to actually understand and work a short sale. Furthermore, most of these attorneys are just doing it to collect the fee, and they're passing it off to some paralegal or to some assistant to actually pump the papers and do the work anyway.
I'd say about 99% of them.
And they're using their ESQ thinking that it's going to carry more weight. Let me tell you some inside news. Nobody gives a shit that you have an ESQ after your name. The bank is looking at their valuation and trying to determine if the offer in hand is going to net them the amount to satisfy the investor. That's it, period.
That's it, right?
It's a dollars and cents game, man. They're mitigating the loss. They're trying to get as much money possible and seeing that if this current offer will net the investor enough to keep him happy. If so, they don't care who submitted it, whether it's some stay-at-home mom that you found on Craigslist or some attorney. That really doesn't matter.
Right.
That's just the reality of it.
Good. So I'm glad you gave clarification on who can actually do the negotiating. So in the beginning, you're saying all you need is a negotiator with preferably some prior experience. So once you have that member, you're saying you could hit the ground, running, so to speak.
You can hit the ground running in starting to get the word out and that you are a short sale investor, which is what I teach people. What is a short sale investor? It's just someone willing to take the risk to buy a short sale. Like we said, there's many different, and in my course we go through all that. There's many different exit strategies that you can put into place, obviously, once you have all the figures known to you. But at the beginning, all you're going to need are these deals. Well, if you're able to successfully put your message out there and saying, hey, listen, my famous tagline that I coined was that, to the realtors was that you'll never talk to the bank and I'll never touch your commission. I mean, that's all we say.
I might have to feel that.
I know people use it. It works. You'll never talk to the bank and we'll never touch your commission. So let me get this straight. You're a listing agent. Let's run two scenarios, okay? You go on a listing appointment. You run some comps. You sit down with the homeowner. The house is worth $200,000. They have a first with a balance of approximately $250,000 and a second with $73,000. Okay? They're extremely upside down. It's going to be a short sale all day long. And what do? Well, you could enter it into the MLS. You put your sign in your lawn. You sit back and you wait. Maybe after some time, an offer comes in. It's a low ball offer. The agent, more times than not, doesn't really know what to do. They send it in. They screw it up. It gets rejected. It takes too long. They don't know how to get a response. The buyer walks. They reflip it back active. Another buyer comes along. It takes too long. The buyer walks. The number one reason short sales fail is because of the time frame, because the buyers don't stick around. Well, in our model, going in as the investor buyer, and we tell this clearly to agents, immediately following the you'll never talk to the bank and we'll never touch commission, we're letting them know that as the investor buyer, we will never walk on your deal.
Exactly.
We are taking the number one reason short sales fail and telling you we're not walking. All right? The number two reason short sales fail is because the bank wants too much money. So let's talk about that for a minute. We're going in with our offer based on our calculations. After our analysis, we're coming in to buy this house. We come all the way to the end of the day. Here's how much the bank wants. Now we know exactly what they're going to take. It doesn't meet our needs. We don't want to buy this. It's too much money to buy and hold. It's too much money to buy and flip. It doesn't make any sense. We're now going to release our interest. We're going to wholesale this short sale. We're going to, with the permission of the homeowner and working with the listing agent, put that property back active to secure a buyer that we can release our interest to. Okay? Obviously, at more money than what we're getting it at. Here's the point. We know for sure what the bank will take. There's no longer a question mark. There's no longer a will the bank take my offer. Matter of fact, we put in the MLS, bank approved short sale in writing. Bring your offers.
Makes it a lot more marketable.
A whole lot more marketable. Well, how do I know the bank's going to take it? Because we have an approval letter. We just have to get it assigned into your name. Okay, well, we had it listed at 189. They came in at 184. They came in at 179. We'll do you better than that. We'll give it to you for 165. Can you come up with 15 grand? Click, 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 click. Everybody's seeing dollar signs, and I'm saving so much money. It works, man. Because again, we took the two problems and the two number one reasons that short sales don't, successfully close. We completely eliminated those problems by reverse engineering it and doing it backwards, and that's why we have a 90-some% success rate, almost 95%.
Right. Now, having done this, actually one of the challenges obviously is explaining that. Like, the whole process is not really complicated in a sense where it's difficult. I mean, short sales are a pain because there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of moving parts. Right. But when you dissect your system into small parts, it's very feasible and it makes 100% sense. In my opinion, the challenge is, and you do a very good job at this, is explaining these complicated situations and breaking them down and explaining them in a very easy to understand manner. So when you're dealing with these agent stuff, I believe it's all coming down to explaining to them in a way that they can understand. And in a scenario that you've outlined just now, I feel that the biggest piece of that puzzle would be, let's say that end buyer comes in, to prep them and educate them. Here's the situation, and here's how it has to transpire.
Absolutely, Ryan, and I think that the key to the simplicity starts with honesty. If you are simply honest and just telling everybody what you're doing, again, we're not trying to hide anything. We are doing everything 100% legal, so we want people to have a comfort level. We want them to know that what we're doing is above board, and that the seller's on board with us, the listing agent's on board with us, that for God's sakes, the bank is on board with us. We are taking a bad situation that we didn't cause and making it better for all parties. And yes, we are going to profit from that. So when they come in with their offer, and that's why we want them to come in with their offer first, they are saying in writing, by the fact that they drew up a contract, a purchase and sale agreement, that they're willing to pay X for this property. When you come back now, we're not saying, if anything, we're even taking that and doing it backwards. Hey, Ryan, I'm willing to pay $180,000 for this property. Okay. Now let me explain the situation. There is an investor involved. He's been working on this file for 4 months. They've completely cleared up all title, all liens, all judgments. They've actually already achieved an approval letter in their name. But they decided that instead of buying it, see, the bank has these hold restrictions that they have to hold it for 3 months. Well, if you really want this house, and they really want to sell this house to their investors to make some money, so they don't have to wait 3-4 months to actually buy, close on it, and then resell it to you, there's a way that we can do this. They're going to step out of the way and let you buy in their place. Now, the way this is going to happen is you're going to pay them, and they're automatically thinking, well, how much do they get it for? And they'll tell them, well, listen, the approval's for $150. And now all of a sudden they're going to freak out. But before they can even finish the thought, say, listen, we're going to make this an incredible offer for you that we think everybody's going to be happy with. We're going to let you have this house for $165,000 or $170,000, saving you $15,000 or $20,000 right off the bat. So now you took an immediate concern and you just put $15,000 or $20,000 into their family's pocket. They're getting the same house that they clearly told you that they were willing to pay $180,000 for based on their written contract. They're getting it $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 cheaper. They're getting it faster.
Exactly.
For this guy to get out of the way.
Right. So you're giving them even a little bit further of a discount, saying, hey, I know you're willing to pay X. We're going to...
Incentivizing them. You're incentivizing them.
Exactly.
The only potential rub that I've ever seen is from that actual buyer's agent saying, well, wait a minute. If my client was willing to pay, let's say, $185,000, and you're now giving to them for, at least on the purchase and sale agreement, $165,000.
Let me guess, lesser commission.
That's $20,000. That's 3%. That's $600. That's commission. So before they can even think that, we let them know, hey, Mr. Buyer's Agent, we don't want our involvement and our way that we do these deals to impact you at all. So we're going to pay you that extra $600. We're going to call it additional realtor compensation on the HUD so that you're not going to lose a dime of commission by us being involved in this deal. Exactly. So now you have the blessing of the buyer's agent. You have the buyers on board. They're saving money. They're not losing any money. You save the homeowner from foreclosure. The bank's netting what they want. The listing agent's getting full commission. Never had to talk to the bank. We make $15,000 for our work.
Exactly. You probably have some people that are saying right now, well, why leave all that money on the table? The reality is you're looking to do this in volume.
Volume, yeah.
And so those small, just to get the deals done and keep it moving makes a lot more sense than trying to get every penny out of that, and you may lose, the entire deal because of.
Think about your option. You could, let's say this guy's, moaning and complaining about, well, I don't want to, pay you. Well, listen, of course, if the buyer, and we have had that, where we would have to tell him, well, listen, it's real simple. It's called go buy another house. Oh, your offer? Okay, let's make this official. Rejected. Bye-bye. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you talking about, dude? I don't have to sell you this house. I'm making an incredible deal for you so we can all win here. And if you're just stupid to see that, go buy something else. Now, that doesn't happen often. Again, positioning it and presenting it the right way, that actually happens very, very rarely. I probably count them on two hands how many times in all these years that's happened. And because some people, just like in wholesaling, cannot get over the fact of you're making money and they're counting your money, they're looking in your pocket, and they just mentally can't get over it. Well, people like that, it's not going to work.
It's not. And I'll say it's refreshing when you hear other investors or associates, professionals that say, look, I don't care what you're making, I'm getting at a number that makes sense for me. And I know those people have been in the business for a while. I mean, the reality is I was giving an example. I'm like, look, if I see the Lamborghini that I want and I'm getting it for $200,000 less, I don't give a rat's ass if you bought it for a penny. It's a deal. I could see that it's a deal, and that's all I care about.
Great analogy, and actually it's almost identical to the one I use. And don't get me wrong, we're not just so crass and try and get rid of buyers. We want to keep the buyers, so we do try to explain to them as best as we can why they should not be thinking this way. They're thinking like an amateur, and it doesn't make any sense. But one thing we let them know, hey, listen, If this was my grandfather's house and he passed away and I inherited it and it was $1 just because he had a consideration to transfer the deed, should I give it to you for $2? Are you buying the house based on the value, or are you looking at what I got it for? Because that doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are you getting it for based upon the current valuation? Oh, it's worth 200. You're getting it at 165. You may want to reconsider this. You know what I mean?
I've actually had some end buyers tell. I said, wait a minute. So if I bought a house for $1,000, you're telling me I should only make something? They said, yeah. I said, you know, you don't get it.
I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders, so we don't have to worry about that.
So let's just kind of bring back really quick, because obviously we said, okay, you got your negotiator.
Start out for your listeners that actually like the guy.
You know who I appreciate? And I'm going to get I appreciate his realness, and it's Trump. And I like him as a real estate investor. I know some people are thinking I'm a huge fan. I don't really get involved in the whole politics thing. I don't even have a TV to follow all of it, but I do see what I see. I'll tell you what, I appreciate that you can't buy the guy.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
In Washington, who can't, if it's true, you know, and I hear a lot of conspiracy theorists out there, I guess you can call them that, saying that he's a plant and he's just trying to disrupt the party and he's going to bow out at the end and then let Hillary slide in. Who knows, man? Like, I'm like you. I don't know. I'm too busy to follow all that garbage. But you know, I do have to agree with you with that. Based on the fact that he doesn't need anybody's money, I think that makes him a threat to the establishment. And I think that that's why he's, you know, polling so high. Because people like that he's an outsider. And, of course, he's not very polished, and he's obviously...
No, he definitely isn't. He says some things, and I know he twists his words, and, you know, it is what it is. But the reality, I mean, he does state some things that are that he tells you what the truth is, not what you want to hear, which I appreciate. I'm not saying I'm going to go vote necessarily for him. That aside.
So we'll chalk up at least one thing for him for that, right?
There you go. But so, okay, so coming back, let's say you have your negotiator, and they were saying, how do you bring on these agents? So let's just say that someone starts your course, they have their negotiator. What are the next, to get some agents on board? Should they approach them and explain the situation? Should they send them a video like this that will show them and explain the process and say, I'm a short sale investor and this is what I intend to do?
Too drawn out, and in my course I have different scripts and things that you can email to agents and all, but I mean really this right here is probably a little bit too in-depth for your average agent. They're not going to take 45 minutes or an hour, whatever it is, to actually sit down and watch this. They just need to know that what you're doing is legal, what you're doing is ethical, and that it's going to save them time and not cost them any money. That's the bottom line. So the fastest way to get your marketing out is really just to find agents who are already doing short sales, not going after their existing listing, of course, because, again, that generally doesn't work. But find agents. Go on, if you're not a realtor, yourself, and you don't have access to MLS, go on Zillow. Go on Realtor.com. Find active short sale listings in your target market and start reaching out and targeting those agents, saying, here's what I do. Here's how I can help you. Call me on your next one. And I'll tell you what you're going to find. You're going to find a small percentage of them, maybe only 10%, 10 to 15% we found, are going to actually come back to you and say, well, what about this one I have right here? Why can't we do this one? Now you're going to start picking up deals like that.
Right. It opens the door.
Yeah.
So, that's really...
Didn't go to them. That's the key.
Right.
Now they're coming to you. And then it's a whole different world of posturing when they're approaching you for help and to work with you as compared to you trying to say, oh, okay, well, let me come in. Because, look, let's put it this way, okay? Let me finish with this. And I think any agent out there or even non-agents could appreciate this. You have a listing and it's a short sale and you have a client and now you have a fiduciary responsibility to this person. And here comes some guy who you don't know. It's some investor, and they're basically saying, all right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to come in as the buyer, and me and my team, whether it's 12 people, like me, or one person you found on Craigslist, they don't know your team, we're going to take over everything. So I need all your clients' tax stocks. I need their pay stubs. I need all their personal financial information. We're going to take care of everything for them. We're going to talk to the bank on their behalf. Of course they're going to be skeptical. You see what I mean? Because you just went right for the throat. You're trying to take over their deal with their client. You know how they get all kinds of possessive about that. And it's very battle. You're not going to win that battle 99% of the time. So I say don't fight it. You just continually cast, and then what's going to happen is people are going to start coming back to you. Sometimes immediately, because you will find that 1 in 10 that say, well, Ryan, why can't we 123 Main Street, the one you contacted me about? You said let you know about my next one, but why can't we do this one? You're a buyer, right? Oh yeah, let me analyze it. And now you're kind of let me consider if we could do it. It's all Jedi mind tricks, man. That's
and it's funny you say that because I have encountered agents that say exactly that. Wait a minute, I control all my short deals. I negotiate all of my short. Well, and I have 12 or 20, whatever. How's that working out? You got free time to even brush your teeth? Holy hell. But
I hang up on those people or kind of just discontinue the conversation because I figured their arrogance at the outset was probably not worth dealing with. But since in my maturity, I've learned how to overcome many of those people as well. I used to say, well, they already do it on their own, fine. Now, it is true that in order for me and my team to get involved and actually go in as the buyer, we do insist that we negotiate the file because I need to know what's going on. We have a very set process which works 95% of the time because we monitor and control that process. If an agent is not willing to relinquish control, which, again, it just becomes a matter of explaining to them why it's to their advantage. Well, Brian, we have an attorney that we use for all these deals. Well, on this one particular deal we're talking about, would you consider the attorney not doing it, or maybe your processor not doing it, or maybe you yourself not doing it? Wouldn't that just free up some time for you if we're willing to do this for you at no charge, and we have an extremely high success ratio in doing this? Like just trying to get into their head and explain to them that I'm not taking anything from you. We're going to get you paid, and you're going to have to do less work.
Exactly.
We're working with you.
And for the ones that come back and say, no, I insist, well, then I'm sorry, we can't do this deal together. I wish you the best of luck. And if you change your mind and it's still sitting out there active after 6 months, maybe you want to change your mind and give me a call.
Right.
Before the bank forecloses on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the reality is you're right. I mean, to start this today, and obviously based off the loophole that if you're not charging the homeowners, which I personally have never done in any of the short sales I've done, you really can continue. You could start this business and again, hit the ground running and then bring on agents as you progress. Obviously, the next step, I mean, you have a team, you have a staff, you work with, I guess, attorneys. So what would the next step be? Let's just say, business is growing. I want to bring on, whether it's an attorney that does negotiating on my behalf that I'm partnered with.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
right.
You want to find out and search out a local attorney to actually prepare some paperwork for you. And because remember, they have the ability to put their fee on the HUD and the bank's going to pay it, so they're going to get paid regardless. How much they get paid, obviously it's part of the negotiation. We always say put on their $4,000 for the attorney. Sometimes they pay it, rarely. A lot of times they'll bring it down to $1,500, $1,000. We always get something.
Right.
And generally the attorney doesn't have to do much work at all if you think about it.
Right. My pitch to the homeowners used to be, you'll never pay a dime out of your pocket. So in a scenario like that where let's say they put their attorney fees on there and they get denied from the bank, are you pretty much just saying, okay, I'll cough this up out of my profit, or is the attorney that you have a relationship with understand that some are going to fly, some are not?
Well, the high majority, probably 90%, actually do get somewhat from attorney. I think it becomes a matter of if you're going to partner with and strategically work with an attorney like that in that capacity, that they know at the outset that here's how it's going to go. The majority you're going to get paid. There may be one or two or a small percentage where you're not, and they just have to be okay with that. And if you're willing to use them on all your deals, assuming you're actually going to do some volume, I've never had one not be cool with that. Actually, that's not true. Let me take that back. I won't say any names, but there is somebody who was not willing to take that risk, and I called somebody else, and they were cool with it. You know what I mean?
Right. So, I mean, let me ask you this just to elaborate a little further. I know we're getting a little more in depth, and then we'll wrap things up. But obviously, somebody who's starting off may want to bring on an attorney, and maybe their initial negotiating may set set the stage for in the future where they go, maybe I should have better negotiated something. And what I'm going with this is, you previously mentioned playing with the fees on the HUD and stuff where they could actually collect, and you have a partnership with that attorney, which they get the checks written to them, and whatever partnership you would get a certain percentage from that, or whatever, however it works. Obviously, if that was not negotiated up front, that could come back to haunt you later on. So, let's just say again, someone they're ready to bring an attorney on board. How would that kind of conversation go as far as what the agreement is, and just so it sets the stage for future?
I understand exactly what you're saying, and it's a very individualized conversation. Every attorney is going to have their own different comfort level, how much they feel that they need just to put their name on the file and represent that person. Some of them are going to do it for $250. See what I mean?
Right.
Think about it. Just to put their name on there for $250, you and your negotiator, you're doing the actual negotiating, which is what legally gives you right to bill them for services rendered. So when they collect $3,000, they're going to take $250 or $500, or you can have. We've even had tiered arrangements where if we collect this much, you get this much. You know what I'm saying? So you can be very creative, but it's going to come down to what you're willing to accept as the investor and what the attorney is going to want on his end.
Right.
What you can't do is just run it through an attorney's name without actually performing the work on your team because then that's called fee splitting or fee sharing, and that's highly illegal. And the attorney can get in trouble, and so can you. You don't want to do that.
Right.
The legal way around that is to actually perform a service of what you're billing the law firm for, and then there's nothing wrong. There doesn't have to be a set amount. It could be per deal. Well, for our work, we're willing to take as compensation and bill you a percentage of what we get. See what I mean? Or maybe you split it 50-50, which I don't think that's fair, but whatever.
Do you feel like that talk, again, going back to someone who's just kind of starting out a little bit, or maybe it's a couple deals and they're really building their team, you feel that kind of talk and that much depth is needed or in the beginning? Or you think if the attorney's seeing that you're doing a lot of deals and giving them business, it would only make sense that as they
not do that at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming you have no experience, assuming you have no track record to actually prove to this attorney you know what the hell you're doing, you're basically saying, okay, look, I bought a course, and I want to run shit through your firm, and I want it's like part of your attorney fee. You ready to go?
Right.
Now, coming to them and saying, I've done 7 deals, I've done 3 deals successfully, and I think there's an advantage to partnering with and working with an attorney like yourself, where we can both be paid in a legal manner, and here's how we can go about doing it. That's a whole other conversation.
Excellent. Brian, I really appreciate it. That was very rich content, and I think we could definitely have you on in the future to dive in more detail. Before we wrap up, can you just tell the listeners whether it's a mentorship program, anything that you have that you're willing to offer, any ways they can get in touch with you?
Well, what we're doing right now is I created a new organization. It's called Investor Entourage. You can actually go to the website, investorentourage.com, just like it sounds. And what you can get by going, you'll see on that site, we have a bunch of videos. We're adding more every week. We have documents you can download, forms, all free. And as a matter of fact, you can actually download, we extracted from our course, which is called Flip Free Profits, training module number 2, which is the deal analyzer. So you can download an actual hour-long training and a spreadsheet on exactly how to analyze a deal for these short sales. So based upon everything we've talked about today, you can actually use the tool that I created on how to analyze these deals and how to get your exit strategy going, etc. And just go to investorentourage.com, put your email in, and that'll be emailed to you. You'll actually be redirected to a page. You can download it. It's completely free. And look around the site, see some of the other projects we're working on. That's pretty much it. We've actually shut down the product. We're not selling the product anymore because there are a few changes we wanted to make. And frankly, because there aren't as many short sales nationwide as there were back when we did version 1 and version 2.0, we just don't think it's necessary to redo the course because the existing course still works. It's just that there's not a high demand for it. Now, again, I know I mentioned before in certain pockets of the country, namely Tampa, the greater South Florida, that area, North Jersey, as you know, Houston, which is up and coming. There are certain pockets of where there's going to be short sales. And frankly, for anybody listening to this, even nationwide, I would suggest one thing. You take a look at your target market and run some reports. Well, you're not an agent, ask an agent to run them for you. How many short sales have closed in the last 60, maybe say 6 months? How many active short sales are there? And if you're seeing next to none, then it's probably not a good niche for you to get involved in.
Right.
Keeping your market, it is a current topic or up and coming. There wasn't many closed in the last 6 months, but guess what? There's 47 active right now. Well, it's probably an indicator that you may want to get involved. In that case, yeah, the course will help.
Right. Let me ask you this, because most of our listeners are in New Jersey. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of emails, whatever. But if they want to, buy the course that exists or find out how to get, any possible way they can get access to it, or not at this time?
We're not selling it. We're not selling it anymore, Ryan. We could work something out. We can make something available to them and get it to them extremely cheap. Why don't they? You know what? The best thing to do? They could email me direct. It's Brian with an I, BRIAN, at BormioProperties.com. Now, Bormio, I'll spell it first. It's B as in boy, ORMIO. Brian at BormioProperties.com. Bormio is actually, my wife is from a small town in northern Italy called Bormio, so that's a surprise how I came up with that name. But send me an email, guys, if you're interested in getting access to the course. We'll work something out for Ryan's audience, and we'll get you a copy of that. But in the meantime, check out the blog, go to investorentourage.com, download the free analyzer, the deal analyzer. I think you'll definitely get a lot of use out of that if you're going to pursue these. And yeah, we can go from there.
Brian, thanks a lot. Again, I appreciate it. Lots of great content. Look forward to having you on again.
Sounds good, Ryan. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care.